Kamala Harris has selected her running mate. It's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. This is according to both the Associated Press and to CNN. We are waiting for official confirmation from the Harris campaign. We do expect that shortly. Walz is 60 years old. He was first elected as governor of Minnesota in 2018, re-elected 4 years later. He's also a former member of Congress, a former high school teacher and football coach, and a longtime military veteran with the Army National Guard. We have team coverage this morning. We have Angie Gonzalez in the nation's capital, and our Jason Fechner is in Milwaukee. Also, later on, we expect to hear from our political reporter, Cassie Simeon. She is in Philadelphia. That's where a rally will be held later on today with the new Harris-Walz ticket. So let me go to you both. Thanks for being here during this breaking news. We were waiting all morning for this. The expectation was that it would be earlier. Angie, let's go with you first. First impression about why Minnesota Governor Tim Walz got the tap.
Well, I think that when there were some concerns expressed by progressives, at least, about Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro possibly being her running mate, the issue came up. His past statements, of course, on the Israel-Hamas war could have been a problem for him. We know that this decision really was down to the wire for her. Reportedly, she went to bed last night not having announced her official decision, wanting to sleep on it and getting a little bit more time to think about things. She reportedly came up with the decision this morning. They even had to come up with multiple campaign signs for today's event in Pennsylvania, where Cassie is at, because they just didn't know last night she was going to make this pick. But I think that there may be some people who are disappointed with the Walz pick, specifically because he doesn't come from a swing state as Shapiro does. Of course, the state of Pennsylvania really going to be critical when it comes down to electoral votes and the number needed in order to clinch 4 more years in office come this November, Josh.
Yeah, Cassie, let's go to you. You are in Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro was being very strongly considered. It appeared to come down between him and Walz. The question I have is, do you think that Harris feels confident that she's going to win Pennsylvania even without its popular governor on her ticket?
Well, I think that Pennsylvania is the biggest battleground state on the map for both Trump and Harris heading into November. Could Shapiro have made a difference? Potentially, but experts I spoke with said that the vice president, Kamala Harris, needed to pick her own running mate that she felt comfortable with, and there could be a number of reasons why she chose the way she did. You know, when we look back at Obama picking now President Biden, then vice president, you know, he wanted someone who would challenge him and didn't agree on every single issue so that they could work through things and have a stronger administration. So why exactly she went with Walz when there really is no advantage electorally when it comes to November, we'll have to wait and see. When we see them on the stage tonight, maybe we will understand immediately why she went with Walz. Maybe it's a comfortability factor. But Shapiro is very young in his career. He hasn't even served 2 full years as Pennsylvania's governor. So really, I mean, his political career is long ahead of him. This is not the end for Josh Shapiro. We'll likely hear more about him in the coming years, and it's likely he will be stumping very hard for Vice President Harris and her new running mate.
Yeah, let's flush that out a little bit more, Jason Fechner. What Cassie was saying there is Minnesota basically is in the bag for the Democrats. If it weren't, then they would have some significant problems on their hands. You know, the question is whether expanding the map, and no one knows better about expanding the map than you do because you cover politics in Wisconsin. That is another really must-win state. Obviously, this is a broad question, and this news is just moments old. But how do you think Tim Walz is going to play in Wisconsin? You know, when it comes to supporting the top of the ticket?
Well, Josh, great to see you. And first off, let me admit that just a little while ago, I was completely wrong by this pick. I was guessing it was going to be Shapiro, and now obviously it sounds like it's Tim Walz. As for how he plays here in Wisconsin, before his career with the Army National Guard and a teacher in Mankato, where my in-laws' family is from, He had a career in agriculture and manufacturing as well. So that clearly plays well here in the neighboring state of Wisconsin. And clearly, to what we've been talking about too, the Harris campaign and the Democrats have not made this pick without knowing that they could win Pennsylvania with Walz on the ticket and not Shapiro. So when it comes to electability, clearly they have done some math on that. You can't necessarily have a great running mate who will serve as your running mate if you can't win the election in November. So clearly they feel pretty confident about winning Pennsylvania, which for both Democrats and Republicans is critical for them. Walz, now 60 years old, of course, helps to balance Harris on the ticket. I'm sure that they've also taken that into account. Again, a little more progressive than Shapiro has been in his short time there in the governor's office in Pennsylvania. But clearly they have done the math on this. They feel good about winning Pennsylvania. They feel good about winning Wisconsin with Walz on the ticket, of course, just across the mighty Mississippi from us here in Wisconsin, and things looking good in Michigan as well right now. Less than 3 months to go. The blue wall appears to be coming together for them. It'll be fascinating to watch the rollout tonight in Philadelphia. They're coming to Wisconsin, of course, tomorrow. J.D. Vance also on his way to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, meeting the Harris campaign, set with a media event as well. So really, we'll kind of watch the next few days play out, starting with tonight there in Philly.
All right. Jason, by the way, don't feel so bad about not thinking that it was going to be Walz. A lot of people thought that it was going to be Shapiro. The betting markets had Shapiro until a bunch of cars apparently started arriving at Walz's residence in St. Paul, Minnesota. A lovely town, by the way. Angie, let me go over to you and let me ask this age-old question, right? How much does this matter? I mean, obviously, vice president is a very, very important position because you're first in line to the presidency and you also preside over the Senate. But politically, does this matter?
Historically, no. It's shown to have very little effect, and you've heard Donald Trump talk about this in recent interviews when he's been asked about J.D. Vance, his running mate, about whether or not it actually has any impact on voters heading to the polls. But I think that there was it was going to depend on enthusiasm, or this could have brought a level of enthusiasm to the party. We know that Harris is currently still in this honeymoon period where she's only been in this race for about 2 weeks now. So certainly the campaign is hoping that she is going to get people behind her now that this VP pick has been announced. That could have been a problem with Shapiro. I think for some, neither really of those two choices really had a national profile that a lot of people were comfortable with, were aware of. And here's a little bit more on your screen about who Walz is. Certainly his time as the governor of Minnesota, people may be familiar with, but a military veteran and a former teacher. So he has a wide array of experience to draw on in this VP role. But we have been hearing for as long as the VP rumors have been sort of swirling that Harris was going to pick someone that was going to be her decision. It wasn't going to be anybody else's. And when we look back at the VP pick of Trump, that also had a lot to do with his comfortability with Vance. So I think it's, possible to say that that was the similar decision that Harris was sort of confronted with in choosing a VP. Josh.
Well, a lot of people, Angie, let me stick with you for a moment. A lot of people didn't know much about Tim Walz over the last few days, few weeks.
To be honest, I had to look up, more on his record.
But he really became well known for his kind of media hits where he used this term weird to describe the Trump-Vance ticket. As much as you can, tell us what he was saying. I mean, the word resonated with a lot of people. Other people thought it was off-putting and childish. But nonetheless, tell us what he was saying about Trump and Vance. That got a lot of eyeballs.
Right. So he was basically calling them weird for the various things that have come up over the past couple of weeks. And it was something that the Harris campaign really capitalized on after it sort of became a hit, including social media, which these days certainly has a lot more of an impact on, the presidential campaign cycle and what is news and what people are focusing on when they're talking at the water cooler. Hitting on that word weird was a little bit different than what we see from the Vance/Trump campaign, maybe a little bit of criticism that people might be more uncomfortable with than the word weird. It might sound juvenile to some people, but it's certainly not the kind of rhetoric that we've heard from on the Republican side in terms of calling people names, I guess you would say. So it was something that they capitalized on. That was certainly an indication that possibly Walz was going to be Harris's pick, that they really jumped on his use of the word weird when describing specifically Vance, but also Trump. So now that we're looking back, of course, hindsight is 2020, but looking at this pick, we're going to find out more once they get on the stage together later tonight in Philadelphia as to why she chose Walz. She's, I'm sure, going to have something to say about his history and his time of service when appearing on stage together tonight.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised, Angie, if actually Josh Shapiro is the one either introducing them or speaks. It's in Philadelphia, and they want to put any kind of acrimony, any kind of division within the party behind them. I mean, just hours ago, really, she was declared the presumptive nominee, getting 99% of the vote. So it's really stunning how quickly she solidified things. They want to really put a cap on all of that. Stand by, Angie. I'm going to go over to Pennsylvania now, Philadelphia, to Cassie Simeon, standing by where this rally is going to be. And have we heard anything from former President Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance? Again, this is just minutes old that we've heard about Tim Walz being the pick of Kamala Harris.
Yeah, we've reached out to the Trump campaign for reaction. Haven't heard anything just yet from Trump or Vance, but we will likely hear from Vance in the coming hours. He will also be in the city of brotherly love later today for an event ahead of Harris's rally this evening. We have heard, though, from Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, the former candidate for president. He is calling Harris and Walz the most left-wing ticket in American history. Minnesota was ground zero for Black Lives Matter riots of 2020. Harris egged it on, and Walz sat by and let Minneapolis burn. So we can expect some of this rhetoric to come out over the next several hours and days, attacking the fact that Walz is seen as someone who is very liberal, whereas Shapiro was someone who is a more moderate Democrat, at least in the eyes of the party. One thing I did want to point out, though, Josh, is the fact that Walz brings House experience to this ticket. So, of course, Harris being a former prosecutor, serving in the Senate, he is someone who brings years of House legislating experience to this ticket. And really, if Democrats are going to be successful in November, that starts at the top down, needing a Democratic White House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic-controlled House. So if Democrats are able to win in November across the ticket, that real knowledge that he has, that institutional knowledge of how things work, how to legislate, is definitely going to be a benefit for him and the Harris-Walz potential administration. Yeah,
I agree. I also see him as kind of being a folksy attack dog, which is to the Democrats' advantage. Jason, let me turn to you. So this is just kicking off a very big road trip for the new Democratic ticket, and naturally they are headed your way. Where else are they going on racking up the frequent flyer miles and trying to get votes in all of these swing states?
Well, essentially, they're hitting all the battleground states and states which they think are in play, including some stops in the Southwest as well. Wisconsin is tomorrow in Eau Claire. Once again, Senator J.D. Vance also kind of following this trip along of these battleground states over the next few days now as they try to roll out this new ticket, of course. And a couple of things there, fascinating to watch how they're able to start rolling out the ticket there in Philadelphia again. But as they hit these battleground states and the country continues now to kind of meet Governor Tim Walz and get to know him, the other part of all this, with less than 3 months to go to November, of course, is that the entire country, including a lot of Democratic voters, are still getting to know Kamala Harris now as the presumptive Democratic nominee. So a lot of formal and informal introductions going on of the American electorate over the next few days. And that's kind of the fascinating element to really watch for with the Democrats now going forward. Is it's really a sprint to the finish line here. Yes, Trump obviously a known quantity, JD Vance a more unknown quantity, and they are continuing to roll him out across the country. But while Harris has served as vice president, obviously not as much in the spotlight as a president. And it's a fascinating few days ahead now across the great United States.
Sure is, and they're coming your way too, Jason, naturally. All right, Angie, you're going to get the last word. Just give me your final thoughts here about what we can expect the campaign to say about Tim Walz, why he was announced.
Well, one really quick thing I want to mention, Josh, is that I think that Republicans were ready either whether they picked Walz or whether they picked Shapiro. They're already attacking Walz on social media. They are specifically going after the state's response to the George Floyd protests a couple of years back. That was a potential issue for him going into this. So we'll have to see exactly how things play out, but the attacks are already getting started.
Yeah. So one final recap here. Tim Walz is the new Democratic running mate for Kamala Harris's campaign. She has not formally announced, so this is according to the Associated Press. We do expect a formal announcement to be imminent. We will keep you posted. Thanks so much for watching. In the meantime, I'm Josh Robin, and we have more news right now here on Spectrum News.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.